easy valuation on those.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the December 10th Public Works and Finance Committee meeting. On our agenda, we have our first action item, which is the approval of Public Works Finance Committee November 13 minutes of 2018, and they looked good to me.
Move to approve as presented.
All right, so we have those approved. All right, our second item, disbursement report for November. Sarah?
Hi. Yep, good evening. And looking at the month end November 30, 2018, major expenditures totaled $4,248,771.91. As you'll see, this is much larger than our normal expenditures, and this would be for one major payment. We did our upfront payment to Idaho Transportation Department for A Street, and that was the $2.2 million payment. Second largest expenditure was payroll, $1,012,122. And the only other thing probably to note was that we did our Microsoft software renewal for the year, and that was $62,346.
No wonder Bill Gates is so rich.
All right. I didn't have any questions. All right, so then we need do we actually need a motion, or is the signing just the action?
You can do it either way. Typically, we like a motion.
Okay.
I'll move to approve and sign the disbursements report for the month of November 2018.
Can I second it? I'm seconding it. We are approving it by our signatures, too. Thank you, Sarah.
All right, thank you.
We're going to vote on the motion now.
Yeah, we are. We're going to vote? I hadn't forgotten.
Aye.
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 I would note that $2.3 million the council approved in meeting, I believe, 2 council meetings ago, and passed a resolution because we needed to prepay about $1 million of that to move the project forward in 2019. You remember that? Thank you.
I was just kind of laughing, like if it says ACH on the thing.
Yeah.
You could see like ache if you had an E to it, like, ah. Sorry. Item 3. Hi, ITD State and Local Agreement, 6th Street LHSIP Project Construction.
Hi, so I'm here also in place of Elisa, who's sick, but we've all seen this project a few times before, so this is just the next step in continuing to move forward on this project. So we've completed the design, come up with a project estimate, and after having the estimate in hand, that allows us to proceed forward with both the state and local agreement and the corresponding resolution for construction. And this is where we will obligate the final amount of our 7.34% match that's required for these projects. To give you just a brief overview of this, this is a 6th Street corridor project that we applied for in 2018. And it will replace, this is a general overview, so I don't want to have to look too much into detail here, but we're working on 6 different intersections between Jefferson and Asbury, and it'll replace 11 pedestrian ramps. 4 of those will be with curb extensions, and our total estimated project cost, which includes project oversight and project inspection, which is part of this grant, will be $154,409. And of that, our local match is about $12,000, and of that outstanding, we've already prepaid $1,000 in one area and $700 in another area, so it leaves us with $10,497 outstanding. So, are there any questions on this project?
Is Public Works doing most of this internally?
No, this is all externally. So the design was done by HHPR, the engineering firm, and they will also be doing the construction inspection.
And we're starting in spring?
Yes. So the goal is with this state-local agreement, then we can go out for advertisement and then start the following construction season.
Yay,
So.
that's exciting. You have any questions?
No. Recommend approval of this agreement.
And would you like it to be on regular agenda or consent agenda?
I think it's a consent agenda item.
I do too.
Seen it numerous
I
times.
was going to say,
Yeah.
it has gone through the full council when we were doing the application.
I
so.
just like to make sure. Yeah. All right, then, we shall move it on to consent agenda, and there isn't any constraint on it or anything, just approval of the agreement and
Yes,
the
ma'am.
corresponding resolution.
Okay. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Nate.
Thanks, Nate.
Item 4, the 2019 city limits designation in place up.
Yeah, I'm obviously not Kevin Lilly. Kevin had to leave today, wasn't feeling real well, so I'm sitting in for him. This one's a pretty simple one. The state code requires that we designate our corporate limits each year. We had no annexations this last year, and so all that we really have to do here is just recognize the city boundaries as being the same as the previous year.
I couldn't believe a whole year had passed.
Yeah, the purpose for doing this is State Tax Commission requires it because it makes sure that what's county is county, what city is city, and if there are designations between taxing districts. So that's why we have to report every year whether we have or we have not adjusted the city limits.
Do we ever get to write to the state and say, we don't really like the area of impact thing? Because it's confusing for us.
Not through this process.
That would be nice. All right, sorry, that was tangential. All right, so we just need a recommendation
Yep.
for this?
Yep.
And it's on consent agenda. All right, so we will acknowledge the unchanged Moscow City corporate limits
Thank you.
for 2019. Thank you.
Yeah.
And then item 5, Gotcha Mobility Bike Share Program.
I'm going to ask Becky Couch with the University of Idaho to join me for this one. This is something that we're pretty excited to be talking about. As I think you're aware, the city has been working on a bike share program for quite some time. We've been in conversations with the university, looking for what might be a good option for our community. We had identified a few different options. We've met with multiple companies. We actually had a signed proposal with one company that at the last minute fell through due to some internal mechanisms within the country and some of the trends that we're seeing in bike share nationwide. But we think that through that work group, we've identified what is probably a good fit for our community. There's a proposal from Gotcha e-bike for e-bikes. Gotcha is the name of the company. And what the proposal is a pilot program with 50 e-bikes, and so they'd all be e-bikes. Their program's a little bit different in that the community that you pay a portion per bike per month. In this case, it's $75 per bike per month. They have different rates. If you do branded bikes, it's more expensive. If you just do their generic Gotcha bike, it's less, and that's what's being proposed. And the proposal is to split the $45,000 between the two entities, with the university paying half of the cost and the city paying half the cost. And so the cost to the city would be $22,500 for the one-year pilot program, and then we're able to regroup and reassess and kind of take a look at how that works. The e-bikes seem to be a really good option for Moscow with the topography. That's always one of the challenging things, is, how do I get up a hill? So we believe that with this option, it will be more attractive for people to actually use them to get around town, because you will have the ability to, I don't know if you've ridden those e-bikes, but they're pretty impressive. I rode one up the 6th Street Hill and didn't really have to change my pedaling pattern all that much. And so it's a pretty neat technology. This company does also offer scooters, and we would have the option down the road, if we desire, to potentially look at adding scooters. Another interesting aspect of this is the company has a team of people that they bring out as part of the package, and they look for corporate sponsorships for the program. So they have a team that'll come and kind of drum up support for corporate sponsorships, and whatever corporate sponsorships they're able to acquire would then diminish this amount. And so this amount would be the amount that we'd have to try so that we could guarantee that we could cover the contract, but any corporate sponsorship that comes on board would diminish the total amount, therefore diminishing the city's contribution. Becky, is there anything else you'd like to add?
I would just add that with the addition of scooters, if we were to do that in the future, it also drops the price. They've estimated to around $50 per bike per month if you do add scooters in the future. I would also add that this company is different than the former vendors we've looked at, in that they do require a financial commitment from the local partners, and I think we saw kind of what happens when there is no commitment from either party. We saw what happened with Spin, and so I think that there's much more commitment from both the local community and the vendor with this model. I've talked to them many times, and they're very committed to building a long-lasting, sustainable program, and they want to work with you to meet community goals for transportation. So they're very committed.
Were you ever able to talk to them about transportation between the communities since they're at WSU?
Yes, and that's definitely something that WSU is interested in, Gotcha's interested in. We haven't figured out the exact framework to make it work yet, but
So I think initially that probably wouldn't be an option, but they are highly motivated and interested
Yes.
in making that work. So that the programs are interchangeable, but
Well, I thought you'd be interested. My husband talked to the bike store in Pullman, and in the last year, they've sold 80 electric. And there's a guy that commutes from Lewiston to Pullman, and on his battery, he only uses 40% of his battery. And then and then it can assist based on your need or desire on the hills. So I think it will be a very interesting piece of mobility for a lot of people, and they've talked about accessibility for people that are handicapped with wheelchairs and being able to use these things too. I think there's a lot of options in terms of accessibility, things that we might be able to consider too.
yeah.
Yeah, and so that the money for us comes out of what?
Well, we've looked at some different things. What we try to do is make sure that the expenditure of funds reflects the appropriation. This was not budgeted, so there's no current appropriation for it. We do have a public transportation line item in our non-departmental in the general fund, so my proposal would be that we would over-expend that line item by $22,500, and then we would, when we open the budget, typically in August, we will bring that forward. So it will either be, if there are under-expended line items in the general area of non-departmental, then we will just absorb it within there. Otherwise, we may have to transfer some funds back from capital. Again, once the pilot program is taken care of, then the council can make the determination whether it's going to continue, and we'll need an ongoing appropriation so we can deal with that then. But if the council wants to proceed with the program, we certainly have the flexibility to do so.
And I just had a couple other questions about where the original program was you could kind of leave your bike anywhere, and is that still the same thing with the geofencing and all that?
It's still a dockless system, and so you'll be able to leave, but there is still the geofencing, and so we can still kind of indicate areas where you do want them or not want them.
Okay, and then did they talk about the lifespan of the e-bikes? They had been doing that with regular bikes, and from what I've been reading, it's like the e-bikes last like 5 years, and the batteries are part of it. Did they talk about that in there at all? Like if there had been a malfunction?
One of the questions that we had for them was just about, I mean, with what we're paying for functioning bikes. And so what
Right.
they'd indicated was that we're signing up for 50 bikes, but in all likelihood, they'll have more than 50 bikes here because they will have bikes that they need.
Make
What they're
sure it's all-
guaranteeing us is that we will have 50 functioning bikes in the system.
Right, that sounds
And
good.
so on them, if we continue this program, they will rotate bikes out as they become obsolete within that fee that we pay annually. And so there's not like, suddenly 1 year you have an enormous expense because now it's time to replace the bikes. What we're paying for is a functioning e-bike per year, and so, or per month really. And so that's what their commitment is. And so we really don't have to do any of the depreciation and bringing in the new bikes.
And they were going to do education. Did they talk about that too?
they have an quiz or test within the app that's required. Every user takes that, and it's a little bit more than just clicking, yes, I read. I think they have to answer a question. They have to actually take a quiz on what they read through. And I think they're all continuously working on more and more. We can customize the app and have whatever pages we want people to have to flip through, and that could change during the year if different safety issues come up or different things. We can change the information. That's about it.
Yeah, and then there'd always been the concern of age, of who can get the e-bike, and could more than one person
They
check
do
out?
allow more than one bike per account, so if a family came and the parent wanted to check them out for their kids, they can do that, multiple bikes. And then I believe that anyone with a credit card can have an account. And then user age is kind of just based, I think it's 16 is what they recommend, but it's really driven by the size of the individual. Like a little kid won't be able to ride
They're not going to be
the
interested in
big
getting on
heavy
that
bike.
bike.
Yeah. So.
Okay. Is there anything else you want us to know? Because I'd like to put this on regular agenda so you could talk about it more.
I have a couple questions.
Oh, good. Oh, great.
So
it looks like you're kind of leaning towards the custom bikes versus the Gotcha branded, because,
No, we're actually leaning toward just the Gotcha branded. The
Okay.
additional, it would be an additional $25 per month
Okay,
per bike to
perfect,
have a
right.
specific branded bike, and we just didn't feel like that
it
was worth
sounded
the
like there's a
expense.
lot more flexibility with adding bikes
Yes.
and also having the one-year pilot programs, right?
Right.
The Gotcha branded, okay,
Yeah.
perfect. And then the other question was about, I know we talked about this in some of the meetings, but the free ride time. So it's just going to be different for students versus the rest of the community?
So
Is that-
right now, at that price, they offer to universities free 30 minutes daily, every single day for any U of I, university affiliate. So they've said that they can't extend that to citizens, and I think it's, they would explain it so much better than I will, but I think they can expect, they know the population base of a university, and they can expect the ridership and what that is, what that comes out to be financially for them, and they've said that, you know, they will very openly say, we have to make money, we have to make this long-term and sustainable, and so they have the user fees for rest of citizens and visitors to town. And you can have membership options, and those are completely customizable, whatever we want to come up with to have citizens be able to buy an annual membership, and then that means they get 30 minutes every day for some annual amount. Or you can just pay per minute of use.
And those particular arrangements are negotiable, I'm assuming, after the one-year pilot is done.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
what I
well,
was
that's-
just
that's when
thinking
we'll-
too. Then we'll have more information so we can see
Right.
if what they predicted, or maybe something will be different
That's
about
it.
Moscow. The 30-minute ride might be not
we-
typical of Moscow.
We may
and then-
come back and say,
Yep.
wow, this is outrageously popular, let's add bikes. We may come back and say, you know what, 30 bikes is plenty for us. We may find that we want to adjust any of those things,
Right.
then we can have those
Seasonal.
conversations.
Or adjust the fee is what I'm thinking, that it might show that, you know, they're actually getting something other than what they expected from the student population versus the city population, that maybe that duration of free time for students, or maybe some free time. I mean, we could propose something different if the data supports that they can still make money with a different
Yep.
setup that extends to possibly some free use for general population.
So fat tires for winter?
They do talk about it having wider tires than a standard bicycle. And they're also out year-round in some of their other areas where they have snow. They just posted on their Facebook recently 4 inches of snow sitting on all the bikes, and they were still promoting getting people out and riding them, so they definitely don't discourage it in the winter, but.
Well, we have a covered bike place for them now.
Yeah.
I think it's going to hold 50 bucks.
Have you ever figured out the helmet thing?
They give away helmets at launch time. They also will give them to partners at their reduced rate. So city or university or any sponsor maybe that wants to help with that can purchase them and give them out or something like that. So there's opportunities there, definitely.
In other markets where they're using a branded bike, is that because there's a dealer in the community? If we had a dealer in the community that wanted to sponsor a certain branded bike because they sell those bikes, is that how that gets going?
Well, when we say branded, like generally what people are doing is, like, for example, they'd want a U of I branded bike, and so it would have a U of I, or the city branded bike. It has a city logo, so rather than being logoed Gotcha, it's logoed City of Moscow with city colors and that sort of
Your
thing
face?
It's $25 a month
Per
for a
bike.
Yeah.
one-time paint job.
per bike.
And
Seems a
then,
little bit expensive.
That's what we thought.
so what would the sponsors get out? I mean, how will they be acknowledged? Because
So
they're not going to be on the bikes.
They can do decals on the bikes, so
Okay.
not that we want them plastered with a bunch of decals, but they also can have in-app advertisements and signage. So they do recommend signage at all of your designated hubs, and so you can have ads on
The
those.
sponsor, okay.
Just recently, I saw an electric scooter in Friendship Square that had an NSA logo on it. So, are you aware that they've initiated a program, or?
I'm unaware of any program that they've initiated.
Could be a privately owned one, somebody painted up.
Yeah, it could be.
And the hubs, are they doing the feasibility study, or have they already kind of
No, they've
proposed?
just said
They
that
haven't.
they'll just look to work with us to identify
Okay.
those. Yeah.
And you know, they're able to track where the bikes are going and where they're parked. So as we start to gain that information, we can see where they're naturally congregating and kind of adjust drop-off points and that sort of thing from there.
Do you think Smart Transit might have some data and some information that will be helpful in identifying what would be useful hubs, you know, what the service times or locations that people want that don't exist right now on the lines. It might be a good place to start. I mean, just a suggestion to
Actually,
get
yeah,
together with
I'm
them
not
when
sure.
you're
Yeah, it'd be worth talking to 'em.
identifying places.
Yeah, we've heard about that stuff.
One other thing I'll mention is that we're looking to launch April 1 as sort of a target. So I don't know if that factors into the budget at all, just.
So that's
with
when
it'd be
the
about
payment
6
would be
months.
due.
I believe. We haven't gotten into those details as far as how do they invoice and when, but, yeah, starting in April.
That's good. Does Gene know? Gussenhaven.
Yes.
Yeah. I figured, you know, he'd be
Yep,
excited
he's
to
been
hear.
looped in, yep.
Yeah, I know, good.
A lot of people have been looped into this discussion,
Yeah,
so.
you've had a lot of people talking to you, that's great. Is anything else you want to ask? So then, looks like we'll consider the request and then move it on to
The regular
the
agenda.
council. And I think we're going to, are we going to move it on with a recommendation to approve?
I certainly would.
Yeah,
I would
me too.
Yeah.
Okay.
There is just want to mention, there's a service agreement or something that,
Yeah, into an agreement
That
with the
they'll-
University of
they'll have
Idaho
to sign,
and
so I
Gotcha
don't know if they
Mobility
want to see
for the
that.
e-bike share program. And we've identified funding. So I think then we're recommending that it goes to council with our recommendation, and then after that, after council meeting, then we'd see if we are able to enter into the agreement.
Yeah, we've never seen the agreement, have we?
No.
Okay.
So,
So this would
We need
be
to-
authority to move forward with it at the, if an agreement can be negotiated that meets our needs.
great.
All right.
yay, that's great. I'm
Thank you
glad
all.
to see you.
Regular
Thank you.
agenda.
Yes, thanks, Vicki.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tyler?
Oops. And now we have a report, Third Street Bicycle Pedestrian Bridge Report.
Just a second.
You hit delete somehow?
There we go. Okay, this is one we're also very excited to be here to chat about. Real briefly, just wanted to give the council an update on the direction that we received to proceed with a bicycle pedestrian bridge at 3rd Street in Paradise Creek. We've been working on identifying the appropriate bridge for this location based on cost, the amount of weight it can carry, and width, and we have identified what we think is the best option.
Can you blow it up?
Yeah.
Go there. Thank you.
Is that better?
Yeah, I'm trying to see the actual bridge info.
It actually isn't in there.
Yeah, it's not in there. This is
That's just the bike path.
This is just to give a point of reference.
Okay.
So we've got a company called True North Steel. It's in Montana, and we've got an order in for the bridge. There were a couple items that we had to work out with the bridge. One of them was making sure that we were able to move it, and that was something that was a little more complicated than it might sound when we want to pluck this thing and move it, because we want to have a solid surface. The company was proposing a wood deck surface and then a pan that we could then pour the concrete in once it was in a permanent location. We actually asked them to go back and look at the engineering to see if we could just reinforce the pan in a way that we could move it with the concrete in place, which will make it a lot easier on the maintenance end and just a more permanent installation as far as the decking goes for us. And we actually just heard back today that option ended up being cheaper when we penciled that out than the option that they were looking at to have the wood that could then be poured in the concrete. And so we got word back today on that and confirmed the order. They anticipate delivery of that bridge late March, early April, which coincides with our schedule pretty well. We had the geotechnical work done, and so we know what kind of footing work we need to do in order to get the bridge set. And so we'll start the footing work very shortly and get that ready to go so that when the bridge shows up, we put it in place, tie it in, and we're ready to go. So we do still anticipate an early spring installation. The one question that we're still working on getting answered, we actually take this to the Transportation Commission on Thursday, is the alignment question. We have two options for alignment. The one option is to place the bridge in the middle of the street, basically, in the middle of the right-of-way. The advantage to that option would be that parking we could maintain parking on this street. We won't have the cycle track continue on this section of 3rd Street, so people will be riding in a share road situation, which will put them out in the street here anyway. And so at that point, we could transition them into the cycle track past the intersection and have this last block be share road and maintain that parking. And in some ways, that could help us with, it could make the installation a little less expensive, because as we have to tie in over on this end, it could diminish the impact that we would have as far as elevation goes with the sidewalks. The other option is to align it over on the far north end of the right-of-way, which would keep it in line, and then we would have the cycle track section continue across, and then it would transition into a share road section on this side of the street. Advantages to that alignment is that it is the future alignment that is likely if and when we install the multimodal bridge at this location. And so it would just be getting it in place the way it's going to be potentially down the road.
Tyler, that's great for bicycles, but we don't encourage pedestrians to be in the streets. So how will you stripe it, or what will you do so that pedestrians will be able to use the bicycle pedestrian bridge?
Yeah, what we'd end up doing, since the driveways are off here and then back over here, we can have basically a drop and kind of a striped path that would bring the pedestrian out across the bridge and then bring them back over to the sidewalk. So there'd be just kind of a striped pedestrian path in those locations that we can put on the asphalt.
So we also put signage there, watch out for pedestrians or something like that, shared right-of-way or something. Great, thank you. And you're taking that to transportation on Thursday?
On Thursday, it goes to transportation to get a recommendation on alignment.
Perfect.
I have a question about, sometimes I've been places when it's tight for walking, and then they tell pedestrians, we don't want you over here at all. We want to divert you over to the south. And have you considered that? So just keeping it with bikes for a while without the pedestrians to the north?
We hadn't considered that. I mean, it's a pretty critical pedestrian connection as well, and the detour is relatively significant. You're either going up to B Street to get across the creek, or you're going down to 6th Street to get across the creek. And so
I just meant on the south part of is there another way to have the pedestrians just out of all that?
Not using the bridge, you mean?
Yeah, not using the bridge.
No,
I
you're going to have to allow pedestrians.
They will use it anywhere.
yeah, and we've
All
got
the other bike paths in town, people, bikes and pedestrians.
and we've got to get them across the creek.
Mm-hmm.
So
And I think with the hawk signal going in on Mountain View too, that's a very pedestrian-oriented feature, so it would be nice if they can continue on.
Tyler, is it possible at, say, the western bank and the eastern bank, going back, those driveways actually are set back from, is it possible to maybe put in some bollards or something? Or some sort of curbing so that pedestrians could take more of a right angle approach and then get on the bridge and a right angle approach back?
yeah,
So that and I think
just so we have some physical separation.
Yeah, I'm thinking Catherine's concerns are you're gonna have some little kids walking out there too. And they aren't gonna be as aware, I
Yeah.
should say.
And the main thing to remember is that since this will only be a bike and a ped bridge, that the traffic that comes up here, there's one car, two cars.
Yeah.
We're not looking at a lot of volume, so the potential for conflict is pretty low. So there's no other reason that anybody drives up to the end of the street.
When you talked about if it was put in line with the bike path, and then it would be where the potential multimodal bridge is at some point. But if it's going to be moved anyways, does that really matter?
It does. The only difference it would make, Brandy, is that that this would already be in place, and so people would be used to this being here. We wouldn't have to, when we installed this, say, okay, now you're gonna lose parking.
Yeah.
It would have already been removed, and so the cross-section would be what it would eventually be.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of, do we want them making the adjustment now or making the adjustment down the road?
I think that's kind of it would, in my mind, be a little hard to justify why that parking has to go away with there just being those two vehicles.
Yeah.
And in the future, when that changes, then
And
that would be the reason.
That was one of the
But-
reasons for offering the alternative
Yeah,
of
I
looking at
like
the
that.
middle.
One of the reasons, too, we want to take to transportation, because not only is this a bicycle pedestrian bridge, it is a bicycle pedestrian system. And the least changes you can make to the system in the long run get people comfortable in utilizing it. And, you know, right now, people are expecting it, say it's 5 years before the the multimodal bridge goes in, those homeowners are going to have definite opinions on whether their parking, which has been allowed to be in there for 5 years, should be taken off now, when the original plan was to have a usable, functioning system.
Yeah. I get that, but also the original plan was to have the multimodal bridge, which was the justification for putting the two-way bicycle lane in that would remove the parking, so.
Yeah, don't disagree.
Yeah.
That's why we're asking
Yep,
transportation
yeah,
their
that'd be
opinion.
good to,
So that's where we're at. We're still optimistic that we'll get her in the spring. Pretty excited.
cool.
Yeah, good. Well, thank you for the update. Is there anything else?
As we move along here, I'd like to see us have a monthly update on what's going on.
We can do it.
Until such time as it's usable.
Done?
That we can do.
So we've kind of gone a long time without anything going on here, and it's like, well, what's going on with that? You know,
Yeah.
where are we on that?
Yep. Hopefully by this time next month, or I would anticipate by February for sure, we will have done the excavation and started getting the footing set. So.
Excellent. Thank you,
Yeah,
sir.
thank you.
Thanks, Tyler.
All right, with that, there is.
Nothing further,
nothing
ma'am.
else. Okay, well, without,
To adjourn.
we can adjourn. All right, thank you. We are adjourned.